Hello, everyone. Welcome to CXO Spice. CXO Spice is a platform for thought leaders who share their point of view on innovation and explain how to make it happen in the real world. I'm your host, Helen Yu. Today's topic is HR's Agentic moment. Our special guest is Rinky Karthik, Senior Director, Product Success at SAP SuccessFactors. Hello, Rinky. Welcome to CXO Spice. So great to have you here today. And before we dive in, Rinky, let's have you introduce yourself and your role at SAP.
Thanks, Helen. Really excited to be here. So I'm Rinky Karthik. I'm a Senior Director of Product Success at SAP SuccessFactors. We are a small but mighty team, and we report directly to the SuccessFactors office of the Chief Product Officer and General Manager, which means we are right at the heart of where product strategy comes to life. And our team focus is on strategy customers, helping them adopt and get real value from our most innovative solutions. And we are also deeply involved in design advisory, which means we are working hand in hand with customers, the product management team, product engineering team to shape that what gets built. And I have spent the better part of my career at the intersection of talent, technology, and transformation. So really excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited about having you too, Rinky, because that's a very unique and exciting role, right? Having been in that role myself a while ago, and I can relate to the type of work you do. So let's dive in. SAP Sapphire just wrapped up with a heavy focus on agentic AI and the future of work. So, as someone deeply embedded in the talent and skills space, what was your biggest takeaway from this year's announcement?
Yeah, and you know what Sapphire made crystal clear is that agentic AI is not a buzzword or a far off concept anymore, right? Customers walked out knowing this is real, it's here, and it is not going anywhere. So the myth has officially expired. What struck me most wasn't any single announcement, it was the coherence
Hmm.
of the vision. So, what Christian Klein came out and said that look, we are building a autonomous enterprise where AI assistants and agents handle end-to-end processes while people and human stay firmly in charge of that decision. So, autonomous HCM is a core pillar of autonomous enterprise, which brings intelligence, automation, and optimization across the entire employee life cycle. And to bring that autonomous HCM to life, Dan Beck, he during the Success Factor keynote, he announced new Joule assistants that will orchestrate dozens of agents to help execute that end-to-end HR process with more precision and surface meaningful insights. So it isn't a vaporware anymore; it's actually being built. And many of it is actually releasing in our 1H release in June and then later in November. But to answer your question, what really stood out for me, two announcements really stopped me in my tracks. I know we are talking about learning and talent, but I want to first focus on the payroll assistant
Hmm.
because payroll is one of those sacred high stakes processes where error don't just cost money, they erode trust with your workforce overnight. And with the new payroll assistant, which actually Dan kind of demoed during his keynote. So with that, we are saying we are not coordinating multiple agents and issues before they reach employee. So I think with the payroll assistant, what we are trying to really say is that there are multiple the payroll is now automatically handling those employees issues before employees start complaining about it, and
Hmm.
that's a fundamental rethinking of how missed critical HR processes or processes used to run. But anyways, the one that genuinely excited me most, given where my focus is, was that workforce upskilling assistant.
Hmm.
We have been talking about learning in the flow of work for years, but this actually does it. So it reads workforce data, a skills gap, performance signals, and then pushes personalized, bite sized learning directly into the tools people are already living in, like Microsoft Teams, Slack, email. So it's not just another portal to log in, not just another course to enroll. So learning that finds you as an employee and when it is relevant. So I think that's the shift I've been waiting to see at scale. And if they deliver on both of those, this is really a great moment for us at Success Factors.
I echo what you just said, right? Payroll and upskilling or workforce skilling assistant, upskilling, those are the two things that top of every single employee's mind, right? These announcements actually point to something much bigger, pointing to a real shift in how SAP is betting on agentic AI across the entire HR suite. And then
Yeah.
that raises important question for the people doing this work day to day. From your
Mhm.
conversations with HR practitioners and the customers, where do you see the most realistic impact?
Yeah. So, I will be honest here. Not every announced capability is going to feel real to customers, like every customers at the same time. I think every customer will have their unique business value that they are looking at. But where I think the impact is most immediate and tangible is in the day-to-day friction points that HR teams deal with constantly, and in the use cases where organizations want to retain and upskill their top talents, their core skills. So
Mhm.
think about the core HR assistant, the HR service assistant, or the time assistant we announced. These are all going live in June 2026. So these are not any exotic AI cases anymore. These are assistants that help HR team stop answering the same question over and over, stop chasing approvals. So they are saving time for the HR team. And Dan shared during his keynote the entire list of assistants and agents that's coming out, and it's around 60, and
Mm,
at least 35 agents are just under the develop and grow component, which is learning and talent.
mhm,
So think about that for a second, like 35 agents. We are talking the skills assistant, the learning assistant, the career and talent development assistant. And then you go deeper and you have got the skills governance agent, the
mm,
job and skills architecture creator agent, the career development agent, succession planning agent, and the list go on. So that's not a feature list, that's really an entire intelligent workforce development ecosystem. So I think that's really going to help customers with direct impact. And
mhm.
you know, I would say that's where I would focus attention if I'm a customer, not just on the big bang transformation story, but the friction reduction story, where I see I'm spending most of my HR admin's time. So let's focus on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing to hear, right? Impact is one thing, but being ready to capture it is another. It can only happen when you start really having this leverage, having something for an employee to leverage on a daily basis. And then your actually first half of 26 release
Yeah.
spotlighted skills governance. How do you think about the relationship between skills infrastructure and AI readiness? Does one have to come before the other?
Yeah. And Helen, this is the question I get asked constantly in my podcast because we talk about talent a lot. So skills infrastructure uh, and is the foundation that makes AI actually useful rather than just impressive. And
Mhm,
governance is a big part of it. Here is why. The whole power of what SAP is building in learning and talent strategy, uh, be it the workforce upskilling assistant, the workforce planning, career development, skills, or intelligence behind recruiting,
mhm,
it relies on having rich, accurate skills data at its core,
mhm,
right? And SAP's differentiator is what we call semantically rich business data,
mm,
connecting the people, the skills, the performance, even the finance and operations into one picture. So I mean, but if your skills profiles are stale or your data is a mess, the AI is just hallucinating. So my advice to HR leaders is don't wait for the AI to be perfect before you invest in skills infrastructure. And don't wait for your skills infrastructure to be perfect before you experiment with AI. There is a feedback loop. But skills infrastructure and governance, it is critically important. And the data behind is the secret sauce. How,
mm.
yeah.
I would agree with you, right? SAP has 300 million plus users, and that's, makes
Yeah,
the data very rich. And then, you can really learn. I have the data can learn from it. And then the
yeah,
practitioners in your community, your talent, alchemy community caught my attention, right?
yeah.
Practitioners living in that community, actually, I'm sure they have some concerns about what all this change means for their day-to-day roles. So what really concerns question are you hearing most from them about AI reshaping their roles?
Yes, and my talent alchemy community, Helen, we have HR practitioners and also HR leaders. I mean,
Okay.
I have that community has both, type of audience. And what's interesting is that the question comes from both ends. So entry-level HR coordinators, they are worried their transactional work will get automated, and senior HR business partners worry that if AI can generate workforce insights on
Mm,
demand, what's their strategic value anymore? Because a lot of this AI can create those planning and strategic planning. So the autonomous enterprise framing that we are doing at SAP isn't just about replacing people. It's specifically about giving people time back to focus on judgment, strategy, and the human connection,
mm,
and take advantage of human intelligence. I talk about human intelligence a lot in my talent alchemy. So AI does not replicate the HRBP who knows that, let's say, retention crisis in the engineering team is actually about a broken relationship between two senior leaders. So that is contextual, right, or relational intelligence, which is still deeply human. So AI cannot replace the human intelligence, but uh, and this is the uncomfortable truth. The HR
mm,
practitioners who will thrive are the ones who learn how to work with these agents and not just be aware of them, but actively use them, shape them, check their outputs. That's the upskilling challenge for HR itself.
mhm. These
Yeah.
concerns are deeply human, and they're not just about the workforce inside organizations, because AI is also reshaping the experience for the candidates organizations are trying to attract as well,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Intelligent hiring at scale was a prominent theme at Sapphire. So, what
Yeah.
does an AI-enabled recruiting experience look like from a candidate perspective?
Yes, and this was the first year Smart Recruiter was part of Sapphire, and I'm just feel so bummed to miss Sapphire this year. But from the candidate's perspective, the best AI-enabled recruiting experience is one where they almost don't notice the AI. They
Mhm.
just notice that the experience is simplified, the process is faster and more relevant and less frustrating. So, what Smart Recruiters for Success Factor is doing with Winston, the chatbot, is a good example. So, candidates can now search for roles using their resume through a conversational interface. So, instead of scrolling through job boards and trying to decode whether they are a fit, Winston actually surfaces relevant roles through a dialogue.
Mm.
That's a fundamentally different experience for candidate now. It feels like talking to a knowledgeable recruiter and not just filling out a form. And then on the hiring side, for the recruiters, when a candidate clears the short list, they don't have to wait 3 days for a human to find a calendar availability for the next meeting, right? That matters a lot for candidate experience and for the conversion rate. So the match scorecards gives recruiters a nuanced view of how each candidate stack up on skills, experience, education, how they performed at the interview, and so decisions are faster and better explained. So I think AI is playing a key role, and smart recruiters for success factor is definitely leading in that way.
Well, I love that Winston, the name, right? Winston, and for as the smart recruiter, that's really
Yeah,
cool. And
yeah.
that kind of the experience is really one side of the coin. The other is ensuring that people, leading these transformations, like CHROs or their team, have the executive alignment. They need to move fast. Speaking of that, right, I actually have seen so much disconnect between what CHROs are prioritizing and what the
Yeah.
broader executive team understands about HR transformation. How do you see that gap closing or widening as AI accelerates?
Yeah, and I would say it could go either way,
Mm,
right? For the gap, it can get close or widen. So if CHROs spend the year talking about AI features, and the executive team is just measuring business outcomes like revenue growth, speed to market, cost efficiency, the gap gets worse, not better.
mm,
The CHROs who will win are the ones who frame AI-enabled HR transformation in the language of business impact.
mm,
So not like we deployed an upskilling assistant, but something like we closed a critical skill gap in our sales organization in 60 days instead of
mm,
18 months. And due to that, the sales team achieved their quota maybe 2x faster. So it's a more tangible outcome. So when the CFO can see the headcount cost, the skills gap, the hiring progress, or seeing the statistics, how the sales teams are closing the license deals quickly in the same planning tool, which is exactly what the new workforce planning capability in SAP Enterprise, by the way, enables. So, so when a CFO can see all this information in one view, suddenly HR isn't presenting a slide deck to the business anymore. So HR is the business conversation. So that's a fundamentally different seat at the table for the
mm.
CHRO.
I love that example because
Yeah.
tying the HR activities to business outcome, make it measurable. That's the way to drive the alignment, right? Speaking of that, it's a great segue for our next question. The
Yeah.
new learning with intelligent Q&A feature caught some attention. So how do you think organizations need to rethink their learning and development strategy to keep pace?
Yeah, so I think the biggest mindset shift is moving from those episodic learning to continuous learning. And
Mm,
that sounds like a buzzword, but what it actually means is your learning and development strategy or learning and talent strategy can no longer be built around send people to a course and check the box, or just assign XYZ course and check the box. It has to be built around building capability in the flow of work and on an ongoing basis. So what when SAP announced with the workforce upskilling assistant during Sapphire is really tangible articulation of what that looks like. It's not replacing your learning management solution. So your LMS still manages compliance training, the formal curricula or program, all of that. But the workforce upskilling assistant adds a layer that delivers a bite-sized, personalized micro learning through Teams, Slack, email, even SMS. So wherever people already are. So concept snippets, 2 minutes here, 5 minutes there,
mm,
flashcard quizzes, that's where we are moving at. And that's the learning that happens between courses, and that's where most capability building actually happens.
mm.
So for the learning and talent leaders, they need to ask themselves, am I designing for the formal learning portfolio and for the ambient continuous learning layer? Because if you are only doing one, you are leaving, a big amount of workforce capability on the table.
I actually love that mindset.
Yeah.
Right? If you think about continuous learning, everyone needs to learn something new, but I love the fact that you focus more on the bite size and personalized learning. So if that's what the workforce upskilling assistant can do, that's fantastic. So for SAP customers who walked away from Sapphire feeling inspired but unsure where to start, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them for the second half of 2026?
Yes, and there was a lot of information shared. I think this Sapphire was it was filled with a lot of agents, assistants. But my advice to those customers would be pick one problem that genuinely keeps you up at night and find the AI capability that maps to it. So don't try to boil the ocean, right? Um, the announcement at Sapphire were expansive. Assistants across the entire employee life cycle, workforce planning, there was some for org modeling, upskilling, recruiting, skills assistance, career development assistance. So So it's easy to walk away feeling both excited and also nervous. So I would suggest resist the urge to build an AI roadmap that covers everything at once.
Mm.
So instead, ask yourself, what's the friction costing us the most right now? What is my pain point, right? Is it payroll errors? Is it the skills gap in critical function? Is it my time to hire in high volume roles? Or maybe it's internal mobility. I'm trying to retain more high skilled workers. So once you find the specific capability, and SAP has built a lot of them going into general availability in June and also in November. So once you focus on that specific problem, um, then look at the AI roadmap, and that directly addresses that pain. So you can run it, learn from it, build trust in the technology internally, and then expand. And something I say a lot also in my podcast is when you are talking about AI-based transformation, start small but start now.
Mm.
Don't have to, like I said, boil the ocean directly, but start with one process, maybe one org unit, and then you can always refine along the way and grow organically.
Yeah, love that. Start small and start now, right?
Start now. Yes.
Rinky, so much. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. Here are four key takeaways from our conversation. Number one, agentic AI is no longer a future concept for HR. It's already here, right? We got a few examples you shared with us. We have payroll assistants. We have workforce upskilling assistants there. Sapphire made it clear that SAP SuccessFactors is embedding agentic AI across the full suite, right?
Yes.
So congratulations on launching the autonomous HCM. So the organization really benefit most are those already investing in the skills, infrastructure, and data foundations that make AI-driven decisions meaningful. Number two is skills infrastructure is the foundation, not the finish line. And skills governance and workforce intelligence are the operating system for AI readiness. Getting this
Yeah.
right is what separates organizations that experiment with AI from those that scale it. I appreciate the example you shared with us how it's being utilized in practice to make this real, right? I love the name Winston, by the way,
Yes.
to really
Yes.
make it happen. Number three, the human side of the transformation is the hardest but most important part. You shared about HR practitioners, the questions they should be asking about what AI means for their roles, and then the leaders who will succeed are those who listen to these concerns, invest in reskilling and bringing people along rather than leaving them behind. And
Yes.
lastly, is the alignment between CHROs and the broader executive team becomes a competitive differentiator. As AI accelerates HR transformation, the organizations that move fastest will be those where HR leaders have built the executive credibility and share the language needed to drive enterprise-wide change rather than just focus on HR change. So
Yes.
yeah, Rinki, thank you so much for a grounded and forward-looking conversation. Your experience working along with HR practitioners and HR leaders and at the forefront of SAP SuccessFactors product strategy gives you a perspective that is both practical and visionary. I'm so glad that you brought that to CXO Spice today. So thank you, everyone. Thank you again, right? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today. Stay hungry, stay bold, and stay grateful.
Thanks, Ellen. Thanks for the chance. Bye.